There we go. So for those of you wondering, yes, the recording and slides will be available after this meeting. If some of your colleagues weren't able to join, this is not a mandatory information session, so they can review the materials and reach out with any questions. And we'll get into some of the other opportunities to connect about the RFP in the future. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We are here for the Consolidated Housing and Homeless Services Request for Proposals, or RFP, applicant information session. We will hop into some introductions real quick. So my name is Jamie Schechter. I'm a homeless services chief here at Contra Costa Health, Housing, and Homeless Services. And I will popcorn the intros for my other H3 staff and our colleagues from DCD. So Cheryl, you want to go first? You're first on my screen.
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, everybody. My name is Cheryl Leonore. I am a health services administrator on the COC team. Thank you for joining us today. And I'll send it over to Shelby.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Shelby Ferguson, COC administrator here on the COC team. Nice to see everyone. Pass it back to you, Jenny.
And Gabriel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabriel Lemus. I'm a deputy director at the Department of Conservation Development.
Gabriel, no one else from DCD is here, right? I don't think I recognize anything.
No.
Perfect.
Just me.
And there's a lot of you in the room today, so if you could please drop your name, any organization you're affiliated with, and any questions you might have that we can be sure to include in our FAQs if we don't get to them today. That'll be really helpful. Okay. So a little bit of background. This RFP was focused initially on funding from a variety of funding sources, and mostly primarily Measure X in our first year of doing this. As we've done this is now going to be our fourth RFP that we're publishing. We've really shifted to try and make a consolidated one so nonprofit organizations who are providing these services don't have to keep applying throughout the year and really have kind of one application period where they can apply for services and focus the rest of the year on doing the work that they do. We really sought to inform the RFP with community input. We've done surveys, focus groups, used existing data from our program providers, used our other funding applications that tried to use all the information that the community spent so much time giving us to inform how we structure and prioritize the funds in this RFP. And we really try to emphasize opportunities for small and emerging organizations applying for new funding and for larger grants to expand programming. Some of the basics. The deadline to apply is a little over a month away. So October 31st, Halloween by 5 p.m. So folks should have plenty of time to go trick-or-treating after if that's what they do. We are only accepting applications through Dropbox. We will have a third-party neutral contractor who monitors our Dropbox. They are called Focus Strategies. So if you see that peppered throughout the RFP document, that's who they are. They support us in a wide variety of projects, including helping with the Measure X RFP. This year, we've got a couple of project types. New project types, which are brand new to either Measure X or any of the other funding sources. Renewal project types, which are only applicable to our Measure X project types, and expansion, which is when projects want to expand upon their existing programming. The priorities of the request for proposals have really honed down to, we want to make sure that there's a housing connection into all the services that we are providing. There are a lot of really needed great services out there that target behavioral health or workforce development, but as a standalone service without a housing connection, that's not going to be prioritized in this RFP. We really are focusing on strengthening and sustaining the homelessness response system. This year more than ever, where we're seeing cuts to state and federal budgets, the use of our local dollars to make sure people maintain stable housing is really important. And we want to make sure that our local dollars are centering equity, addressing the historical inequities we've seen in homelessness and housing instability. Eligible applicants, that'll be many of you. Primarily, we see applications from 501c3 nonprofits in good standing, including religious organizations, nonprofits with a fiscal sponsorship, all that fun stuff. But we also open this up to other public entities, including tribes, school districts, library districts, etc. However, just making sure for folks who might work in multiple counties or multiple regions, the services in this RFP must be delivered to Contra Costa residents only. And if I'm talking too fast, no worries. We'll have breaks for questions and feel free to tell me to slow down. So when we're looking at kind of the first category, the homelessness response programming, this will be a category that we are using multiple funding streams to support, and it'll be renewable depending on that funding availability. Sometimes we are receiving one-time dollars from the state, and those are not going to be renewable because once the money's spent, it's spent. We don't have replenished sustainable funding there. But other times we do receive multi-year funds, and that'll be potentially renewable. I want to really highlight that Measure X funds in this RFP will be primarily used to renew existing applications and existing programs. So long as programs who were awarded last year are in good standing and meeting outcomes, or if they got a late start to contracting, which is very possible, or have strong plans to continue to meet outcomes, we will be aiming to renew. And this is really, again, in response to a lot of the community input we got, where it's really difficult for our providers to be giving services when year-to-year funding is unsustainable. So the Board of Supervisors approved a multi-year renewal process for Measure X dollars, and we are in year 2 of that cycle this year. We want to make sure that we're focusing on housing-related programs that preserve people in their housing or provide a pathway to permanent housing for people who are currently experiencing homelessness. We're prioritizing sustaining high-performing services, and a lot of times this is an ideal funding source for established agencies with robust infrastructure. We expect most programs to conform to the continuum of care program models and performance standards. And Cheryl, if you're able to drop those in the chat, that would be great for folks who might not be familiar with them. Specifically within the Measure X Housing Fund, and these are some of the dollars that are administered by our friends at the Department of Conservation and Development. We are also looking to make sure we're funding tenant legal assistance, so supporting folks who are not yet unhoused, but might be experiencing housing instability and eviction proceedings, all those sorts of things. Looking at case management and service navigation, basic needs assistance, such as our care centers or emergency shelter operations and services, warming centers and drop-in operations and services, legal assistance, rental assistance, supportive services for individuals in housing programs, and landlord recruitment and engagement. So strong emphasis on these kind of priority areas within the Measure X funds. Okay. For these renewal projects, the priority is going to be currently funded activities continuing to fill a system need and meeting outcomes. If you are funded by H3, which is going to be the large majority of our Measure X contracts, you can reach out to Shelby and Cheryl if you have any questions about what your renewal status. If you are funded by DCD, Gabriel is going to be your contact. We are also really particularly focused on emergency shelter and warming center funding, prevention and diversion funding, our coordinated entry care center funding, and our California Department of Social Services and Social Services program funding. So these are all specific pots of dollars that are kind of built in to the RFP. And if they are of interest to you, then I would definitely encourage you to read through, dig into the funding sources from California Department of Social Services and HUD coordinated entry to really understand the full kind of scope of what that looks like. So what's new in 2025? So last year, we had funding for homelessness response programming and capacity building program types. This year, because of our focus on sustaining services, we are not opening up capacity building project types. All funding will be used for homeless services program. Last year, we had one application for new, renewal, and expansion project types. And this year, we have one application for renewal and expansion projects and one application for new projects. We really work to streamline the renewal project application because we know how long these funding applications take. And so long as you are meeting outcomes, our renewal projects are able to be renewed pretty simply. So we try to minimize the amount of work. A lot of these funding sources are administered by H3. So really encourage y'all to be reaching out if you're currently funded and have questions about your renewal status. Okay, so that was a lot. Any questions? And I'll try and see if I can open up the chat. Feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. If we receive Measure X capacity building, would we be considered a priority for continued funding? Not as a specific category under this RFP. Capacity building funding in past years was a one-time funding opportunity meant to build capacity and make folks more prepared to apply for a bigger program service provision. So that's not something that gives anybody an edge in and of itself. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving. We're going to dig into a little bit of completing the application itself. So what we've done on the following slides, and thank you, Cheryl, for really putting these together, is tried to split out what new projects application process looks like and what the renewal and expansion project application looks like. So for the cover page, the first kind of application component, it is required for everybody, new projects and renewal and existing projects or expansion projects. It's meant to capture that basic information about an organization and the project information, really high level stuff. Don't spend 10 hours completing this piece. The listed contact information on this cover page will be what's used for the RFP communications. So if there are questions we have about your application or notifications we send out later in the year, that's going to be the email we use. So make sure it's somebody whose email is monitored. In the event they win the lottery and move to Aruba, you want to make sure you're getting those emails. Section 1 is also required for everybody. It captures a little bit more of the basic information of the organization for new projects, gives us a little bit more detail on the organization itself. And it's primarily yes or no checkboxes with opportunities to be uploading additional documentation to demonstrate the things you're attesting to. This is information we have for our renewal and expansion projects. So for those projects, we're really asking applicants to talk about any proposed changes to their projects they have or progress they've made towards their goals. And there is a 3-page limit for each program applicants are applying for. Section 2. For new projects and expansion projects, this is required. Renewal projects do not have to complete Section 2. This, for new projects, will capture your organizational mission, your commitment to engaging people with lived experience, and your commitment to equity. And it's going to be requiring uploads of supporting documents with your final application to illustrate those commitments. For expansion projects, we're going to ask you to provide a clear picture on the expansion project. What's the increase in capacity you're going to be getting with additional funding, and how, or like increase of the services or number of participants served, all those sorts of things. This too will have a 3-page limit. Section 3, required for new projects only. So this is, again, really our effort to try and streamline as much as we can for folks. But for new projects, we do need to understand the clear picture of the program and the activity or service proposed. And for each program, there's a 3-page limit. So for example, oops, sorry, I went ahead a little bit. For example, if you are applying for 2 programs through this RFP, if you are applying for Measure X funding and CDSS funding, California Department of Social Services funding, they're totally different programs. One's focused on CalWORKs families, for example. The other one's focused on just anybody experiencing homelessness that you want to provide services to. You will need to submit Section 3 for each of those programs, and you have a 3-page limit for that. We want to be able to understand how you'll be tailoring services to meet the requirements of the funding source. Section 4, again, required only for the new projects. This will confirm your alignment with program models and any additional program commitments like participating in coordinated entry if that's relevant, or participating in HMIS if that's relevant, for example. It'll require more detailed responses related to administrative structures and organizational practices, and this narrative portion shouldn't exceed 3 pages. For renewal and expansion projects, this is information we have already, so we are not asking you to complete this again. Okay. The budget. So the budget summary tab of Exhibit C, and again, that's on the website, and Cheryl can post the link to our funding page where you can get all those documents. It's required by all applicants. We want to know full scope, how much are you requesting, what sorts of leverage funding you are providing to make a program whole. We will ask for a narrative in that summary. That includes how funds will be used and kind of the justification for the overall budget. There is an optional, oh, that's the next page, sorry. So yes, like I said, it'll include all the funding requested through the RFP, and it's really helpful to include any additional funds available that'll support the project. So for example, if you have a permanent supportive housing project that is almost completely funded, but you're a little underfunded in your supportive services, so you're asking for us to fund 1 case manager. It's really helpful for us to understand that 1 case manager is actually going to be a part of a team of 4, and you are serving 100 residents or something to that effect. So it really gives us the full scale of the project and how much you're asking us to commit to it. The budget worksheet provided in the 2nd tab of Exhibit C is optional. What is required, however, is that all applicants are submitting a detailed project budget. So you don't need to use the worksheet we provide you, but we do need to have that detailed kind of line-by-line breakdown of the funding you're requesting with the justification for, hey, this is what this role will do. This is why I'm requesting this much in travel or supplies. How you're calculating these things is really important when reviewing application. It really gives panelists an understanding of how the funding will be used. Any questions on the application components? Okay. We're almost through all the slides. So submitting the application. All documents must be completed and uploaded prior to 5 p.m. on Friday, October 31st, 2025. Please do not wait till 4:59 p.m. because the time we're tracking is the time it gets into our Dropbox folder. And so if you're like, great, I hit submit at 4:59 and the internet's a little slow in your office, it might not get there until 5:02, 5:03, and that would be a real shame. So please make sure you're submitting in advance. If you have any trouble accessing the Dropbox or how to upload things, you can contact Mandy at focusstrategies.net. Her information is also listed in the RFP document itself. We tried to include screenshots in there to help people navigate. And it's a lot better than some of the other processes we've used in the past, like email. So it's not perfect, but it's an improvement for sure. We're asking that each agency submit kind of one folder. If you're applying for multiple projects, you can put everything in the one folder for your organization that's applying for them. This is not the only chance to learn about the RFP. We have two applicant office hours. These are drop-in sessions where you can talk with me and Gabriel and Cheryl and Shelby to ask your questions about the technicalities of the RFP. We cannot say, oh yeah, this is how you should structure your program, or this is what's going to give you the edge over this other applicant. We can't do that sort of advice. But if you're confused about, hey, what's emergency shelter versus a warming center? Those are the types of questions we can help you work through. We will also be working to post a frequently asked questions document like we have in past years. And if you have any questions that you want responded to, please make sure those are in by October 17th at 5 p.m. So you have a little over 2 weeks from now to make sure you are reading through the RFP, thinking about your program, and sending in any questions you have to homelessprogram@cchealth.org. Please do not reach directly out to me, Cheryl, or Shelby or Gabriel, because it's very likely one of us might, be out of office on vacation or out sick and cause a delay in kind of getting all these questions aggregated and responded to. So we really, really request all questions go through that inbox, and we won't be able to respond to individual inquiries. And at my final question slide, I see one in the chat already teed up. If a CBO, community-based organization, focused on mental health, eligible to apply with prevention and early intervention programs, especially working with CalWORKs families. So this is a great question. Those are fantastic services. You are eligible to apply, but if those CalWORKs services do not kind of fall within the umbrella of what's being requested in the RFP, specifically, we're looking for rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention services, they likely will not be prioritized for funding. When we talk about homelessness prevention, it's a little bit different than how our behavioral health colleagues talk about prevention. We are often talking about programming that supports with legal assistance, back rent, moving assistance, all of those sorts of things to help participants avoid exiting stable housing into homelessness. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Where can we find like the links that you had showed, like for the Dropbox and like for the emails and stuff?
Yeah, they're all in the RFP document.
Okay.
So we lifted them directly from there, as well as the links to register for upcoming office hours. So everything should be in the RFP document.
Okay, thank you.
Feel free to hop off mute or raise your hand. This is the end of the slides I have. So if you want me to go back to any slides you were unclear about or that I talked too quickly through, I'm happy to do that. But really most of this time is dedicated to answer questions from you all.
I have one question, and I may have missed this earlier. Is there a maximum bidding amount per category?
No, there is not. We did put in the RFP how much funding we estimate having available. So I
Okay.
wouldn't recommend going over that.
Right.
We
Okay.
can't make money out of thin air. For our California Department of Social Services grants, because they're so varied and because the state has given us such a funky allocation history where
Mhm.
one year they'll give us a pot of money and then it can roll over, and the next year they give us a pot of money and it can't roll up. It gets very complicated. We gave people estimated amounts to kind of give them a sense of the scale we'd be looking for. So you can definitely, go to the California Department of Social Services, look up Contra Costa specific amounts to get a
Okay.
sense of what we've gotten in the past. But for, ease of applicants, we gave everybody kind of baseline estimated dollars.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl put the email address for the RFP in the chat in case anybody didn't catch it. And I'll go back a slide just so you can see all the important dates that we have on here and where you can find the RFP materials. Brandon's asking, I'm wondering if I'm proposing a project for transition-aged youth, would it be rapid rehousing category or emergency shelter? You can propose the project that kind of best fits your service model. There might be more open funding sources like our Measure X dollars or our, emergency shelter dollars that have, open populations. So I would highly recommend proposing the project that best fits your organization and your program. And we always encourage applicants to ask for what you need. Don't try and, squeeze things to be the lowest bidder, because what we're really looking for is who's going to be providing the best quality services. And that doesn't always mean going with the lowest dollar amount. I will also be very upfront. In the past 3 years, very few applicants have gotten their full requested budget also. It gives us a sense of what we can scale down to or what we can scale up to when you ask for what you need. So just want to be very clear, we do not have enough funding for all the services we would desperately want to fund, but it is helpful to understand how we can best piece up our dollars to spread that across the community. Mhm. Since I have y'all here, if I'm curious, how many folks have applied for this RFP in the past 3 years? Do we have a majority new applicants, or folks who have kind of been through this before? See one hand up, feel free to raise your hand or drop a chat reaction, any of those. Definitely see some familiar names. Thank you, Pressa. And then Brandon's asked, can you explain more about the multiple narratives for each proposal or funding category? Sure. So, for example, we have a wide variety of funding sources in the RFP, and you might be seeking to apply for rapid rehousing services for our CalWorks program, as well as homelessness prevention services under our HAP dollars, or homeless housing assistance dollars from the state. And so we would expect you in the program narratives to really tailor how you're going to serve CalWorks families versus the general homelessness prevention population that you might be serving with other funding sources. So really look at kind of the funding grids that are within the RFP and think about the different populations they're serving, how your program changes to tailor and incorporate feedback from participants within each of those programs. It's also helpful to think about them in terms of separate budgets as well, to kind of separate out the detailed budget amounts. And, this person would be our case manager for CalWorks versus this person being our, accountant for our prevention program who's going to oversee all the, direct financial assistance we administer. Those sorts of things are really helpful within the budget to help the panelists who are going to be reviewing these applications understand how the program's actually going to function. You're welcome. Okay. I'm seeing the chat slowing down. So I think we might be nearing the end of time. Again, happy to stay on as long as folks are needing us to. And I will be, of course, following up with the team to post these materials on our website. And we will have a link to the recording in case folks are audio learners more. Nicole, you're asking if we are getting Measure X dollars as a subrecipient, does that prevent us from applying? And are we considered new if we do apply? If you're a subrecipient, no, that does not prevent you from applying for your own funding. If you are not currently under contract, that would make you a new project with Measure X funding. So yes. When can we request the one-on-one meeting? As a small nonprofit, is that after submission or before? So I think, Brandon, you are referencing the interviews that we do for the small and emerging organizations. And that is criteria that's kind of laid out in the RFP for folks who aren't familiar. Those typically happen after the application is submitted. And it is intended to really give the panelists an opportunity to ask clarifying questions and learn more about the organization, and the organization to talk to the panelists about things that they might want to highlight in their application, because we recognize that new or emerging organizations that are smaller may not have kind of the depth of grant writing experience that many of our established organizations do. So we want to give them multiple opportunities to kind of highlight their services and their work in different ways. And of course, you're welcome to join the office hours on October 7th and October 14th, and we can create breakout rooms if there are kind of more one-on-one questions that you have there. Nicole has asked if we are under contract, is that a renewal? If you're the organization that's receiving funding from the county is under contract with H3 or DCV, then for Measure X dollars, that is considered a renewal as long as they are not a capacity building organization. Did that make sense, or did that did that confuse things more?
No, it made sense. Thank you.
Perfect, great. Sorry to sound like a broken record, but happy to go back through any parts of the PowerPoint, answer any questions. Otherwise, I think we are seeing a trickle down of questions happening. Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing, so at least we can all see each other's faces a little bit better. And I say I'll give it to 10:10. No further questions. I think we'll close the meeting. Thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time. As I said at the beginning, this wasn't required. So if your organization didn't attend very strongly, or you know colleagues who didn't, that does not disqualify you from applying. For the priorities, how does CCH define centering equity? That's a great question. We're really looking, that can happen in a variety of ways. So we're really looking at applicants to tell us how they're doing that. But things that speak to it can be found in our program models, for example. We have equity measures defined for each various program model. We're looking at making sure that folks aren't having disparate outcomes, that folks are not being denied from services at disparate rates, lots of things like that. You're welcome. Alrighty, so if there's no further objection, it's 10 after. I will stop the recording and end the meeting. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. Have a great one.